2014, I'm sitting down across, from a table like this, but way long, big room, all of these prosecutors and FBI agents, IRS agents, all of these, and interns and law clerks and all that. And they want prison time.
I'm a former Detroit police officer and rode with the One Percenter Motorcycle Club. During that time, I was involved in a lot of altercations. I had a gun shoved in my face. The trigger was pulled, and I got a plate under my left eye. I'm Manny Vitale, and this is my story. Good evening, everybody. How you doing? I'm Manny Vitale, host of My Fight Our War, and we have a very special guest tonight. And as far as social media goes, unless you've been living under a rock, you know the name Ian Bick, and you know the podcast Locked In with Ian Bick. And I had the absolute pleasure back in June of reaching out, talking to Ian about my story, what I was hoping to do. And Ian was nice enough to give me a chance, put me on the show, gave me a shot. And lo and behold, here it is, 5 months later, Ian's on my show. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me. We're just talking off camera about how far you've came. And, my platform's open to everyone. I hate when people say, like, oh, they gave them the opportunity, because that's what, if they knew about the show, they would know that's what it was all about,
Exactly.
So many people are like, what do I have to do to come on the show? Bro, you just got to have some type of story and be willing to tell it and trust me with it. The rest, I don't care about the celebrity stories, man. I want the normal stories. Honestly, I'll even appreciate your story more if you've never told on any other platform. If yours is the first story you've told ever on a podcast, I love those stories. Not that the other ones are bad, but I just love the breakthrough stories no one's ever gotten, Those are the powerful ones. So I love, I have guys that would say, hey, I waited to do your podcast first, or, this and that. And I think that's so cool, that they trusted me to do that. That's when I know I have something really cool and special.
Yeah, and that's what it was. In fact, that you just said that about trusting you to do it. You're as far as the breakthrough show was the biggest, because sitting there opening up in person was my first one. I've done others through, the StreamYard, stuff like that. But as far as in person, sitting down, and you made a comment about having the trust in you to tell such a personal story. And not only that, but even reached down a little bit deeper. I actually brought up things that I never thought. I mean, it's not stuff that I couldn't, but you made it so comfortable because there was no judgment, and like you said, it was just my story to tell. You just kind of helped guide that story, and it made it so easy. And that says a lot about you and Locked In and what you're doing.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's all about being like a good listener, That's where I had to get out of my own way when I figured out about podcasting. And that's where I think a lot of hosts and people that are creating podcasts go wrong. The second you make it more than about you is when I will think you'll have your success. Like people in general, not you specifically, but the first few episodes, it was questions, me, this, that, But now it's the guest. I tell people the best episodes are when I don't have to say anything. I mean, like your episode, you ran with it. I just set you up and get the person comfortable and talking, and they're good, and it'll happen naturally. That's the best stuff, and that's what the audience wants to see. I can't tell you how many times I see a podcast or a clip, everyone's talking over each other, this, that. I don't like that. I can't listen to that.
Yeah, that's what it was too. So, well, with that being said, like I said about living under a rock, your story has been out there, but this is going to be for me. I purposely don't like to get a big backstory on everyone because I like that shock and awe as the guest is telling me the story as well. So, like, as far as with you, your backstory growing up and everything from just normal childhood, normal family life, to going from that to owning your own nightclub at, 17, and then booking these major bands to go into federal prison. I mean, it's just like when you're looking at the scope of life here, it's like, well, wait a minute, how does this happen? It happened. So feel free, man. Let's jump in here and let's get into this wild ride.
I've lived quite a life, and I'm in Act 10 or whatever right now. It's pretty crazy to think about. And like the nightclub stuff, like a lot of people know me for the nightclub stuff. And even sometimes people will discover my podcast and they hear bits and pieces of my story and they're like, I think I saw your documentary or I saw you on Vice or where do I know the story from? And then when I say I'm like from Danbury, Connecticut, Danbury is so notable because of the Trashers, AJ Galante. And then I would say second to that is my story. And Tuxedo Junction, which is the club I would come to own, are the two most popular stories. And then there's a little bit from our old mayor. He did something with Oliver, whatever that guy's name is, Oliver Stone, not Oliver Stone, I don't know, the talk show host or whatever, the late night guy, Oliver Stewart, I don't know, whatever the guy's name is. They did like a trash thing or whatever on him, and he was funny. But yeah, those are like the notable things that Danbury's known for, and Glover Teixeira, the boxer, and then the other MMA fighter, or they're both MMA fighters. But I would say that's what, out of Danbury, Connecticut, of all places, those are like the most well-known stories. So it's pretty cool. Even though I can't wait to move out of Danbury, I hate Danbury. They're just so unsupportive. Like I like a couple of restaurants in Danbury, you know, like I referred to Stanziato's.
Instead of Domino's.
Yeah, instead of Domino's. But Danbury's just, they're so weird. Small town vibes, unsupportive, like, you know, just crazy. But yeah, I grew up in Danbury, Connecticut. I was born in New York City, grew up in Danbury, Connecticut. Mom, dad, brother. Good family vacations. We had the dog. We had the family movie nights, the pizza nights. Everything was good. And I was just always natural born entrepreneur. I think you're either born an entrepreneur or you're not. And the people that become an entrepreneur later in life, they've had that element to them early on that it took some time to grow into. I think it's very hard if you're just going to wake up one day, say, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, because you don't have that in your blood. There's no one in your family that's had it. It's very hard to translate into that. Not saying it's not possible, but it's just extremely hard to learn it and see that happen. And I see that all around me, like people that want to jump into podcasting or whatever, and it's very entrepreneurial and they just don't have that in them because you have to do that. You got to do everything. You got to do this. Look at perfect examples like a deli owner, small business deli owner. They're coming in there. They're coming in at the crack of dawn. They'll clean the place. They'll, make the sandwiches. They'll work the register. They'll do everything. That's you equal that to podcasting. I'm doing the clips. I'm doing the editing. I'm doing the filming. I'm doing everything, the booking. So it's like that. You need that as an entrepreneur, and then you grow and scale from there. So I exhibited that in childhood. I sold candy. My dad would give me $20 in middle school, and I would go to the CVS and buy a bunch of stuff, gum, energy drinks, candy, turn that into a couple $100. I would do the lemonade stands. I always worked hard for my money. I wanted the new Wii or the new PlayStation or whatever it was. I would take that and I would work hard for it and run a lemonade stand or do whatever I had to do to hustle and get that money to get that system. And that was my life. And, in freshman year of high school, a couple things happened. I was doing musical theater all 4 years. I was never into sports. I was always kind of picked on, too, for, being chubby. People would call me Twinkie or this and that, what mean kids do. And I was doing musical theater all 4 years, so I was kind of building popularity because I would do the cast party at the high school where all the upperclassmen, lowerclassmen, everyone that was involved in the musical theater would come to my parents' house. They lived on the lake. And we would have 200 or 300 people in this private Jewish community called Lake Wabico, which is right down the road from us. And my dad would get
you.
Yeah. Well, then it worked out because the neighbors would go away. It was a Jewish community, a lot of summer homes, literally a synagogue across the street, but it was summer homes. So the neighbors weren't there. They would just come up on the weekends or the summer or whatever. So I would throw these parties and. My dad was a caterer, so he'd eventually get like a big tent and put that in the yard and stuff. So it was kind of cool. So that was going on, and then me and my best friend Steven got into some trouble foaming the cars of the president and vice president of the community. We were like retaliating against them. We ended up getting caught. We weren't the smartest criminals.
Screw the system.
Yeah, exactly. We weren't because I've always been very like against officials, and it was all about like stupid rules. Like they banned backpacks, they banned flip-flops in the middle school. So I started a petition. I would go against it. I got suspended not for fights. I got suspended for going against silly school rules, So that's just like when someone makes up a rule, tells me I can't do something, it's in my brain to just go against that. So we get into trouble, community service. I start this thing called Fight for the Homeless, where I was selling rubber wristbands for $1 a piece, raised some money for the homeless shelter, took it to the next level by doing a school dance at a corporate center, which would end up hiring me when I turned 16. And I did this, when I was 15. I did this school dance, convinced the principal to let me do it, had, 300 people raise money for charity, and it was kind of that night where a couple things happened. One, I knew I liked having that attention, like being on stage, doing theater all my life of, wow, everyone's talking about me. People like me. I'm not being bullied. I'm getting popular from this. I'm the man, And also, hey, if I could do this for charity, there could be a business here. 300 kids at $20 a head, there's some profitable here.
You've always been into, even at such a young age, about money and hustling. I mean, lemonade stands, you're already thinking about screw summer vacation.
It was never about the money, though. To me, it was about what it gives you. So, like, the lemonade stands equaled the new Xbox or the new Wii or whatever. The dance equaled popularity, being liked. That's what it gave me. And I think that's when I went down that path of doing the events in the clubs. It was always the attention aspect, Like, even now, I'm not motivated by money. I just want to pay my bills. Pay the bills, pay the restitution, maybe get a couple things here and there. But I live a pretty simple life. It's not like I own a house. I don't have a flashy car, Like, I just want my bills paid and live comfortably. And, like Joe Rogan says it best, if you're able to go out to a restaurant and not care about what the bill is and order a good dinner, that's all that matters. I like going to a good restaurant, But I'm not into the flashy jewelry or this and that. I'm not into that. I'm not into designer clothes. I live a very simple life. I don't see me getting anything more than a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment for the next 10 years. What's the point? To me, in my mind, it doesn't interest me right now. And maybe that could change when I get a family and stuff. But we'll see when that time comes. So I do that dance, and I want that feeling of getting liked and the attention even more, because when you do an event like that, everyone talks about it in the days leading up to it and the night of, and then the pictures the day after. But after that, no one's talking about it. You're only as good as your last event. So you want more and more and more. So I start throwing these big house parties at my parents' house. In addition to the cast party, 200, 300, 400 people ragers, cars lined up and down the road, people on the trampoline. We had an alcoholic bar in the patio my parents didn't know about. We were charging $5 a solo cup to cover the cost. And we would pay upperclassmen with fake IDs to get all the liquor. People were smoking weed, going out on the boats. It was a grand party. And, thankfully, looking back on it with all the crap you hear in the papers, like, no one got killed driving drunk because there was no Ubers back then. And, there was no problems. The cops came one time for a birthday party I had there where there was actually only like 50 people, and everyone had left by the time the cops came. They just showed up like an hour late, and it was an early night because it was a birthday party, and we just had a bonfire and stuff. Got so lucky. Every time a kid threw a house party in high school or in other towns, cops would be there within 20 minutes. And it would get shut down, and people would run through the woods like a stampede when the cops would come. I started throwing these parties until, my parents finally put their foot down, couldn't take me saying there was only 30 people coming and 200 would show up all these times. And so I rent out this theater in Danbury called the Palace Theater. And I have like 500 people there, make some money. This is my first for-profit event, turned the lobby into a nightclub for the night. And then from there, I found this local nightclub, a historic nightclub called Tuxedo Junction in Danbury, Connecticut, that, had rock bands like Oasis, Joan Jett, all these big names, but had died out in recent years. And it became, more like rap concerts or these things called teen nights, which had died out but had gotten a bad rep because of underage drinking, this and that. But I go there, and I had used to see the flyers for teen nights when I was in middle school, and I knew, like, the cool kids would sneak into these clubs. And I go there, and I knew teen nights had stopped happening, so I wanted to bring them back, and I convinced the owner, who's still one of my good friends to this day, to let me rent the place out. And the whole place altogether holds about 1,500 people. Illegally, like, the max cap was like 600, but it could fit way more. And then there was divided into 3 rooms. So he didn't trust me with the full room. He didn't think I could pack it. I'm a 16-year-old kid. I wore a suit and tie to school every day, thinking I'm this big businessman. I had an LLC for the first time, a business bank account. I'm carrying around a briefcase. I would get detentions for answering a phone call in the middle of class pretending I'm like with a vendor or something because that was my image. I couldn't tie a tie, still can't to this day. So my dad would tie my tie every morning, and I'm walking into school like this. And
High school,
that was me. You won't catch me in a suit. I hate suit and ties, Even for court, when I went to court later on, I would like wear like I guess a jacket and khakis and stuff. But I don't know. It's not me, That's not my look. And so he convinces me, and long story short, I get like 300 people that first night, 200 or 300 people, pack the room out, and he gives me the big room. And each event, like I was the first person at the time, this thing called electronic dance music was popping up in other states. And I had this local DJ kind of mix like reggaeton and electronic and hip hop and stuff, and put it all together. It was like electronic dance music a little bit. And the cool thing about these teen nights was that unlike a school dance, there was no chaperones, just security, so that you could, do whatever you want on the dance floor. Kids were coming in drunk already. Like you don't serve alcohol at these teen nights, but kids would come drunk at pregame. Unlike at the high school, they would breathalyze you, or if you look drunk or whatever, and you couldn't grind on each other, and the music wasn't edited out like with swear words. It was a cool spot, It was always so funny in the years later too, watching like kids get dropped off in groups of cars wearing sweatpants and stuff, and then as soon as their parents drive away, they're stripping down to like nothing. That was just a thing. So we called these things raves, and I did the Halloween rave, the Christmas rave, a paint party where we threw paint on the crowd, foam parties, and each one got bigger and bigger and bigger, 700 kids to 1,000 to 1,200 to 1,500 to 2,000. And I went once a month, I would do these events. I would make anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 in a night cash just for myself. And, I was always spending it on my friends, or I never really drink, so I would be the DD, and my dad had an SUV. So after we left a house party, I would buy all my friends Wendy's. I became known as the Wendy's kid. We would buy $300 or $400 worth of Wendy's. We were just having a good time. We were kids. I bought my first car. It was a fun time. And then naturally that dies out like all good things. And I wanted to take it to the next level. So I get into concerts. My first ever concert was with Big Sean. That had lost some money, so we learned from our mistakes. And then I went out and raised money from friends and family to do more shows. And really what my downfall is that I was so confident that because I had experienced, when you're young and you experience that much success, like I had a bulletproof business plan. I really should have just went off to college and continued that theme of doing these events and made a killing and did whatever, but instead I'm thinking bigger picture, these concerts in a realm I didn't know, already experienced all the success, where when I failed for the first time, it ended very badly. So my big mistake, I have all this success, and then all of a sudden I'm in the big leagues of trying to raise money. And when you're asking people for thousands of dollars, people aren't just forking that over to you, especially when you're a kid. But I did have this reputation of success, but I was so confident that these big names, like when you're looking at trying to book Wiz Khalifa and big names, you're thinking in your mind, okay, this is bulletproof. You're not going to lose. So I guaranteed everyone's money back. I said, hey, if you invest $10,000, I promise you're not going to lose it. There's no collateral. This is just on a contract I found on LegalZoom or whatever. And I said, hey, you'll get your money back. I wasn't promising at this time anyone a profit, just you'll get your money back. And that's how I raised like six figures, before I was even 18 to do this concert business. And the very first concert fails. And I thought it was making money. I had other partners. Throughout this whole thing, I never had the actual connects until later on. So you have to go through one middleman to a middleman to another middleman. There's all these middlemans, and everyone's taking a piece. And, I end up losing that first night when I think I'm winning, and I telling everyone, hey, you're going to make money tonight. And I even brought these kids to the show. It was at Rhode Island, the University of Rhode Island. It was a Rusco act. And it was that moment. That's like the one life-changing defining moment, because I raised the money legitimately. Even though I promised everyone their money back, it was really just like a civil type thing. But I lost that night, and I lied. I said, hey, you made money when it really lost. But I wanted to be liked. I didn't want them to hate me, and I didn't want anyone to know I failed, that I said it lost money. I mean, I said it made money when it really lost. So not only was I out there initial investment, I was now out an imaginary profit. Now, once you tell one lie, you just continuously tell more and more and more lies. So, that's what I did. I keep telling more and more lies. I'm raising money. Now, not only am I raising money, I'm giving people a guaranteed profit because I need to make up money for the past. I'm saying, hey, Manny, invest $20,000. I'll give you 50% back, because me and my business partner had started this electronics type business where we thought we could sell wholesale Beats by Dre that we were told are falling off a truck, dented goods, which turned out to be fake for, a 300% return. And so we're taking loans and investments for that. We're doing all these things, and it got way too out of control. And next thing I know, I'm 18 years old, get $600,000 or $700,000 from investors in 2013. No accounting, nothing. I'm investing in even more concerts. And the thing about the concert business is you invest this money into something that's not going to happen 6 or 7 months away, and you're tying that money up. But I'm promising people money back within 30 days or 40 days or 50 days. So how do you get that money to pay them their returns? Well, you take on more investors and you pay them, and that's where this element of a Ponzi scheme
I was just going to say.
accidentally comes in. I never knew what a Ponzi scheme was. They don't teach you about that in school. Bernie Madoff was still too new. That had happened a few years prior. And I'll die on the stone. Like, the whole thing was just an accidental. It was bad money management. It wasn't an intentional Ponzi scheme. It was bad money management. Kids that never should have been given this much money. And we made dumb mistakes. And out of that money, we bought a pair of jet skis, which still to this day, that's all the news could ever really write about. I didn't put my kids through college or buy some crazy cars or, I bought jet skis for $20,000 that we had for 3 weeks, and we later pawned to a pawn shop that took advantage of us, and we lost them over like $6,000, And then I bought one designer clothes outfit, which was the stupidest thing I could have ever done because I don't like designer clothes. And then we did dinners like with some of the investors, and we took a couple trips with some of the investors. But that was it. The whole run of this elaborate Ponzi scheme was like 3 months long or 4 months long. Everything before that was legitimate business, and everything after with tuxedos that I would later come to own was legitimate. So this happens, and I'm promising everyone their money back, and simultaneously Tuxedo Junction went out of business. So I took some of the money and invested to buy the front room, like fix it up, got taken advantage of by a bunch of contractors, all of these things. And by the end of 2013, I'm 18 years old, and I'm $1.2 million in debt because I'm promising everyone this 50% rate of return that people keep rolling over and rolling over. So if you gave me, say, $2,000 as a kid, because a lot of these are kid investors and their parents, there was about 20 people. If you're a fresh high school graduate and your $2,000 on paper turned into $30,000, that's a lot of money. You think that's your whole life ahead of you, You don't know that there's so much more money to be made out there in life and all of this. So when your friend, who is a good friend of yours, referring to me, has a lawyer now and is saying, hey, you're not getting any money back or there's a loss here, they're in their minds like, I got to go to the police. So I think looking back on it, the parents never would have went to the police, but the kids go to the police, say they're owed all this money, and then they get their parents involved who are also owed money. Because from the parents' perspective, they kind of look dumb that they took advantage of a kid, giving him like, all right, Manny, say you have a lot of money. Are you giving a 17-year-old kid $50,000 to get $75,000 back in 30 days? And you're an experienced business person that has that money, owns property, owns all this. Are you giving me the money? It doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
But it was happening.
It was happening, and people were giving that, and that's how I raised the money. We were kids that should never have gotten this amount of money, and we made stupid mistakes. And I regret those mistakes, and I'm sorry people lost money, and they're entitled to get their money back, which they're going to get their money back. It's not a lot of money in the scheme of things, And no one's out on the street because they lost that money. I didn't take from old ladies or old men and wipe their life savings. And then I interview these types of people, and they don't have any intention to give them that money back. They'll pay $100 a month. So, they don't care. You've probably seen it as a police officer.
Exactly.
They don't care, So that happens. The police investigate. From what I know is that the state's attorney, now in a Connecticut case, you're a first-time offender like myself. In any state case, normally a case like this, it goes to the state. If they prosecuted me, I would have gotten, a first-time offender, no jail time, deferred prosecution or whatever, and got probation. If anything, it would have come off my record. I had no criminal record. This is not a violent case. The dollar amount's not big. But it doesn't become a state case because the state prosecutor declines to prosecute. Someone has some pull. I think it was an overzealous detective at the Danbury Police Department. Pull some strings to get it to the federal level. I think looking back on this, the feds thought this was a way bigger case than what it was, and it's the salacious headlines. Danbury teenage nightclub owner. Ponzi scheme. Come on, this is 4 months. This isn't no Ponzi scheme, And they take the case, and next thing I know, I'm meeting with federal agents without an attorney because I was just trying to do the right thing. I go and testify at the Department of Banking, and little did I know there's federal agents waiting for me, trying to act like they were my best friend. They sit me down. We're going to help you get through this. We know it wasn't intentional. And I put the whole case together for them. I bring them all the documents. I bring them the investors. I bring them contact numbers. I built
names,
the whole
numbers,
case.
Everything.
I gave them everything. And I said, here you go. This is an accident. And then I got the impression that they were just looking at me as the big fish and they just wanted me to go to prison because all the kids talk. When you're dealing with kid witnesses, every time they're talking to them, I would get wind of it. People hear through the grapevine. So I got an attorney, and that's when it started. 2014, I'm sitting down across, from a table like this, but way long, big room, all of these prosecutors and FBI agents, IRS agents, all of these, and interns and law clerks and all that. And they want prison time. I always say to everyone, I would have taken a plea deal if the deal was, okay, you pay the money back, felony on your record, no prison time. They refuse to give me that. And that's what I think a lot of people get wrong about the feds is they do not care about the victims. They don't care about getting your money. They don't care about all that. They care about sending you to prison. That's what's wrong with the criminal justice system. I do not think, yes, I made stupid mistakes after the trial that, resulted in me going to prison, like leaving the state without permission to gamble, to fund the club and everything, because I ran and owned the nightclub and took over the big room while I was on trial and everything because I was on bond. But before that, you couldn't have given me a deal for no prison time, pay the money back, save taxpayers. They probably paid 4 times as much as what I owed because the net was only $480,000 that people were out money. You couldn't have given me a plea deal. We would never have went to trial. You wouldn't have investigated for all those years. You wouldn't have sent me to prison. Just one plea deal. That's all I wanted. And you couldn't give that to me?
That's just insane. And like you said, no criminal history.
None.
There's no Ian Bick grabbing this file and it's this thick.
I started to get criminal history when after the feds indicted me, I would get arrested by local authorities for stupid violations. They would raid the club. They said I was selling liquor without a permit, which I was. But all this stupid stuff, that they never would have hit me for. They were hitting me hard. They sent the fire marshal. They sent everyone. They sent undercover cops. They thought I was selling drugs out of there. I wasn't selling drugs. People were selling drugs, like patrons that would come, but we had good security and the cops would take them out. I invited the cops to come. I'm not doing anything, And so...
You're as transparent as could be.
Dude, I was never into that. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. When you look at the whole case, why did this become federal? And you look at a lot of his politics, too. I bet you if it was a Trump-appointed, prosecutor, it wouldn't have happened.
That is insane.
They chase the headlines. They love the headlines. You look at all this stuff with the feds pick up the salacious stuff. Should this have been a Fed case? I don't think so. When you look back on it, it should have been a state case, And I wouldn't have went to trial. I only went to trial because they pushed me into a corner. And I think they thought I would never go to trial. I'm a 19-year-old kid, 18 at the time, 19 when they indicted me. And they ended up charging me with 15 federal counts, including lying to the agents that I sat with. So they charged me with all these counts. They arrest me at 5 o'clock in the morning, guns blazing. You would have thought I was a terrorist. Drag me out of the house in handcuffs. And that's what happens. And we said, run it. We're going to trial. And, we went to trial. It was like a month long. And what an experience that was. It was just me and my lawyer. And it's scary, me and your lawyer against the United States government. Their courtroom's filled. I even testified, and that's what they tell you not to do. And I held myself pretty well. A 20-year-old kid at the time, at that point, facing down an experienced prosecutor at trial, and I testified for 2 days.
That's nuts.
Yeah, man, it was
what
crazy.
What is going on with mom and dad?
I mean, they were, it was hard for them. My mom didn't find out until later on, until the investigation started, what was really going on. My dad didn't get involved until much later because I was always very independent. But yeah, it was just, it was crazy. It was a crazy time period, and I'm glad they get to see my success now that came from that, because I think that makes amends with all that. You never really make amends with how all that was going through my mind, but when you see the success that came from it, then it's rehabilitating. It's reaffirming that, hey, that needed to happen.
Yes.
Like, this is my life. I've been talking to people lately because, now that Trump's getting into office, I feel like I'd have a pretty good shot at getting a pardon, but it's like, do I really want one? Because that's my life, owning that. And I think it's a staple to others. Like, hey, you have felonies on your record. You could go out there. You could build a business. You could come back. You could put this out there. And the same people. Like, I think it's just so funny. We talk about karma and revenge. And they say success is the best revenge. But all those people I went to high school with, these kids that were really only owed a few $1,000s out of their pocket, right? Mm-hmm. They were so dead set. They wrote letters to the judge. He belongs in prison. I got scammed. When I went to get off probation early they wrote letters. They showed up at sentencing. All of his kids that were my friends. And they formed those opinions because the law enforcement agents were going down their back saying, hey, he's a bad guy. He deliberately scammed you, But those people that talked and, when I got indicted, all the negative posts on Facebook and the mean comments, I remember reading them off a prison cell phone, and just like all these people you're close with, coming down at you, saying he was a scumbag. I knew all along, this and that. The best revenge now is seeing, hey, okay, you wanted me to go to prison. You sent me to prison. Well, look at what became of that. You thought this was going to affect me the rest of my life, having the felony on my record. Well, I did work that normal job after prison. I worked a crappy job and I rose through the ranks and I got up, but now I turned it into something good. And that was solely based on going to prison. And my success doesn't even necessarily come from my story about prison. Yeah, I use that as a tool, but it's not like I talk about it every day. Mm-hmm. I'm running with other people's stories, And the success comes from also like people. When you get arrested, there's all these negative press articles, and you never get the other person's side of it. It's just the prosecutor's side because you're not allowed to talk or this and that. So now when people come on the show, what comes up first? It's not Ian Bick scammed investors. It's Ian Bick's locked in podcast or positive articles and stuff. So other people, that'll happen to too when people search. I bet you when you search Manny Vitale, your interview with me or now your YouTube channel will start to come up too.
Yeah.
So I think it throws it right back in. And what can they say? I did this legitimately. I did this on my own. I built this and I put in the work to do it. And it's because you wanted me to go to prison. I think it would have been even a worser punishment if you sentenced me to like 6 months house arrest. There was no crazy prison stories because I didn't build my platform off of my nightclub stories, which I always thought were the coolest things. I built them off of the prison stories because of the way I look. That I look like McLovin and all the crazy shit that happened to me in prison, which was even crazier than me owning a nightclub at such a young age and booking all these big acts because it's been done before, like Billy McFarland's of the world and stuff. But not every day does a 21-year-old white kid from the suburbs go to prison that looks the way I look. So those stories that they were so dead set on me going to prison for is what changed my life. That's what I did. I just didn't know it at the time.
See, and that's the thing, too. You saying that, just like I tell people about My Fight or War and all these terrible things where with our platform dealing with addiction, dealing with all these terrible issues that come along with addiction, is I had this one guest and I said, you know what? We actually have to be thankful for it in a kind of twisted way. He's like, thankful for addiction. If it wasn't for addiction, all those terrible things, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. My Fight or War wouldn't exist. I wouldn't be having you on as a guest. All these negative things that happen, if you let it consume you, you're done. Flip that around into a positive, just like you were saying. Look at me now, and that's exactly what it is. It's exactly what you did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just from that, I mean, that is insane. Just federal case, coming to your house, guns drawn. That's insane enough. And then you go into the federal prison. Mm-hmm. How in the hell did that go?
I mean, it was crazy because they all labeled me as a sex offender because in federal prison, if you're young it's mostly there for a gun case. You got caught up in a RICO, you're a low-level drug dealer, which, I should have just said I was there for drugs or guns or something. Then they would have believed me. But because I said I was there for fraud in the feds, there's no one there that young for fraud. It becomes a state case, The only people there for fraud are all older, middle-aged people. And the people that say they're there for fraud are lying as a cover because they're a sex offender. They call them a chomo, a child molester. So they thought I was a chomo because they thought I was, the same person that did that, But I wasn't. And I didn't know anything about prison politics. I didn't know about paperwork, that you got to show your paperwork. And, that's how they treated me.
So here, now you're dealing with this whole new education. What to say, what to do, how to act. Where did you even begin?
Well, you learn, the first time. Yeah, the first time I went to the chow hall, I sit down and one of the guys is like, "You're not allowed to sit here." And I'm sitting at the white table. I'm thinking this is where I'm supposed to go. I watched Orange is the New Black before I went to prison. So I remember being on a contraband cell phone watching Orange is the New Black because I wanted to finish the series, And so that was the only prison. I never saw like Shawshank Redemption, Prison Break, or anything. I should have watched Prison Break before going in. I would have learned a lot. But I didn't know how to move. I just knew, okay, you sit with the white people. I'm white, sit with the white people. And that's when I learned about paperwork because they said you can't sit here without good paperwork. And they make me sit with the chomos. And that's when you kind of put the pieces together. Okay, this is how people think of me, And then also got into trouble moving around too much, getting a phone, a cell phone, gambling, doing all these things. And I wasn't running with anyone. I wasn't running with a gang, or they call it a car in federal prison, like the state you're from, because everyone thought my paperwork was no good when all they could have done is Google me and saw I went to trial and I'm not a rat or anything. And people started to pick on me because you're the young white kid that just got to prison that has a phone, and all these guys that have been down for years with no money, they saw I was getting sent money. They think I'm a rich white kid. And so, people try to extort you. They try to hurt you. They try to do all these things. And you have to adapt quick. You got to be slick. You got to be quick, You learn all of these things. And that got me into trouble. And, eventually I ended up getting put in, protective custody because there was a video of me getting, wrestled on the ground by my cellmates that we were having fun, but they put it on the phone. Someone was recording, and then the room got raided, and they saw it. And they were like, "Do you want protective custody?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, put me in the shoe. Get me out of here," because some other guys from D.C. were trying to extort me. So I don't care. I'm not tough. I'm not hard. I'm not, no one's going to jail for this. So cool, I'll go there. I was in the shoe, and then they said they were going to transfer me to Danbury, my hometown, which was great, which is where they really should have sent me to begin with. Honestly, looking back on it, they should have sent me to a prison camp, but they didn't. My points were too high for whatever reason. So then they put me through diesel therapy. I go to Brooklyn, then Philly, and then all the way to Danbury. It took 3 months to get from New Jersey to Danbury. I get to Danbury. Danbury's a low-security federal prison. Sweet spot. At this point, the Italians knew me. People knew me that were from the area. I had a reputation. I had my paperwork this time, and I'm not even in the yard for 24 hours before the lieutenants locked me up and put me in the shoe. That shoe was like Alcatraz with the bars and the tiers and everything, 3 floors high. And I had dated a guard's cousin there years before, and he reported that he used to come to my house for barbecues. So they put it as a conflict of interest. He fucking ratted me out.
Man,
so yeah. So I was in the shoe there for another 4 months, and then they finally lower my points. That's where I was the orderly, because I was only there on an admin hold. It's not like I was there in disciplinary. So I was painting the cells. I was the head orderly. They would call me Squints from the Sandlot, which, funny enough, the guy from the tier there, that was the tier, the main shoe guy on the 4 to 11 shift or whatever, he lives in my apartment building. I've seen him. We haven't run into each other yet officially, but he lives there. I'm like, holy shit, what are the odds of this in Danbury? Because my apartment building's 10 minutes from the prison now. And I've actually been on CNN to talk about some of the celebrities that have went to prison there and stuff, or that go to prison there. And HBO filmed a little segment outside of it too, and I passed by it. So anyway, it's always weird being on the outside. So anyways, then they put me through diesel therapy. They put me on Con Air. I'm thinking they're sending me to camp Otisville, which is right near here, a couple hours away. Instead, they send me to Oxford, Wisconsin. I go on Con Air all shackled up, go all the way to Oklahoma City where they have the big terminal airport for the prison transport where the plane literally pulls up to the detention center, get off all shackled and everything. Did 2 weeks in Chicago where R. Kelly was held. And then from there, I went on a bus 6 hours or whatever to the middle of nowhere, Oxford, Wisconsin. But that was a sweet spot. It was cool. It was like, that's why they call it Club Fed. 100 inmates. They had a dog program. Some of the inmates had dogs. There's 4 wings. They're 4-man cubicles, but only 2-man per room because it's not at max capacity. They sent George Papadopoulos there for 2 weeks from Trump's thing. There's a bocce ball court. There's a volleyball court with sand outside. There's a basketball court inside, outside, a track. Guys are running through the woods to bring back McDonald's, Chinese food, cell phones. You walk down a hallway at night and everyone's bunk is lit up. Everyone's got a phone. I actually just read they're closing that camp, which makes sense. But guys would leave to go hook up with their wives at the motel, and it was crazy. They had camp drivers that would leave to get the mail. There's a medium security prison down the road. So inmates are driving the trucks, the lawnmowers, all of these things to maintain it. I was a snow shoveler for a little bit through the winter, but that's where I really learned about like lifting. I got into really good shape there. I would run, I would lift with some of the guys, my bunk mates. They took away the weights, I guess, years prior. Only some federal prisons have weights, so we made weights out of cinder blocks. And for legs, we would pick up the picnic table while someone's sitting on it. We would do pull-ups. We had like little ones for arms. We did all these things. It was really cool. And then I ended up working in the kitchen. And that's where the prison guard, almost tried to take my biscuits.
Yes.
I was making muffins that day, and he's feeling up on me, and he tries to grab my ass and stuff. And then a couple weeks later, he corners me in the walk-in freezer. And I'm holding this tray of cookies trying to get by from him. And, he's forcing me to rub my, ass against his groin. Just like crazy shit like that would happen. And that's why I did a year there. And that's where I would end up coming home from in January 2019. I got a 3-year sentence, 1 year home confinement, which the home confinement wasn't bad because half of that, the whole world was locked down because of COVID.
That's right.
I did like 26, 27 months inside. And I got home and I was like, I'm going to go be a nightclub owner again. That's my redemption story. In prison, I wrote all these notes, which I still have to this day, laying out how I'm going to be a nightclub owner again. I'm going to get a big book deal because I read Wolf of Wall Street's books. I started writing myself. I'm like, bam, this is the plan. Getting a movie deal right away. My story's so good. And it was never about prison. I never thought in my mind I would be talking about prison. It was just, okay, book deal about the nightclub stuff, owing the money, this, that. And then it ends with me going to prison into the sunset. Bye. I get out, realize the nightclub thing's not possible because you need more investors and who's giving me money. And it would have been a violation of my supervised release, this and that, which was the best thing for me because a year later COVID happened. So if I somehow got the club started, it would have been wiped. It would have been done. So I ended up getting a job at Whole Foods. And, I make it through going to the halfway house, which I thought was more miserable than prison. I get a job at Whole Foods, and I start off at $15 an hour. No one would hire me. I applied to like 100 places before prison after I got my conviction, but Whole Foods took me before I went to prison because I was trying to pay the money I would make at Whole Foods while working the nightclub and show the judge, hey, like I'm paying the money back, but I had violated bond, which really pissed him off because I was going out of state. I would gamble to pay off the artists and the electric and stuff to keep the club running because I thought the club was the key to paying everyone back.
The key to success.
Yeah. So, I get this job because they had hired me before and I left on good terms. My first call when I got locked up was to my mom to say, call Whole Foods and say what happened to mark me in like good standing. So Whole Foods took me back and I couldn't even get a job as a dishwasher at Red Lobster for like $8 an hour, $9 an hour. Whole Foods hires me at $15 as the starting pay at the time for the company. And I started as a hot bar cook and grinded, went up to supervisor, went up to, I went up to associate team leader. And then I got team leader in Massapequa opening up their new Long Island store. And then I ended up moving back to Danbury because a position opened up. And I became team leader there. Because of Whole Foods, I got my own apartment. I got a dog. I had a girlfriend at the time. I got a car. I had credit for the first time in my life. All of these things, all from working there. And I remember those early days of the $15 an hour days. I would wake up, go to the gym at 5, and 6 a.m., 6:30 at Whole Foods, work there till 2, drive to Wilton right down the road from us here, and work at a pizzeria for 5 or 6 nights a week. This is just to cover my rent at my apartment because the rent was so high, but I wanted to move out on my own. I didn't want to live at my parents' house. And I would have worked there till 11, go home, take a shower, and restart the day, sleep for 6 hours a night. And I did that for like 2 years until I got promoted and I was able to leave. And COVID happened and I lost a job at the pizzeria, but I still worked at Whole Foods. And by the time I left there 3 years later, in 2022, it's been 2 years since I left now, a little more than 2 years, I was making $33 an hour. As a team leader, I was about to be making probably 35, 36, and with overtime, because there's a lot of overtime if you're a hard worker, I was going to make 6 figures. I think my pay stub that year was like 70 or 80 grand. If I worked those remaining months, it would have been that. Yeah. And my friend, that was a videographer from Tuxedos, who I owe all this to, convinced me, hey, start telling your story on TikTok. And I remember procrastinating for months working at Whole Foods, and I ordered all this gear. I was like, yeah, I need the iMac, and I need this. I need the phone stand. I put up the foam padding in my room with the Generation Hustle, the sound. I did all of this stuff, and I would send him the pictures as it comes in, and I didn't use any of it. I didn't need any of it. All I needed was the iPhone turned to me like this, and I did this fancy editing and stuff, and the first few TikToks were about nightclub stories, which they did okay, a couple thousand views on Instagram. Now, keep in mind, at this point, like Vice had done a documentary, HBO did a documentary, but I only had like 5,000 followers on Instagram, couple thousand on Facebook, a couple thousand Facebook friends, no TikTok following, no YouTube following at all, nothing. So this is 2 years ago. And the first Instagram got a couple thousand views, and people are commenting, like people from high school, this is silly, what you look dumb, why are you talking about this, And the 5th day, this was going to be my first video about prison. I get COVID and I'm like dying in bed, and it's all stuffy. The room's kind of dark, and I'm redder than normal. And I'm like to my friend, I can't post today. I got a good post. I'm going to talk about prison, but I can't post today. And he says, Ian, if you're going to go down this path, you're going to take this seriously. You got to be consistent. And I end up all stuffy, nasally and everything, make this post. It's about solitary. This is the first time I'd never talked to my parents about prison, never talked about it to HBO or Vice because the story was in the nightclub. It was never about prison, which is also why I think I've been successful, because all of these people that go to prison, their stories are all about their crime. The documentaries are never about their prison experience because the documentaries do them so quickly, either while they're going through it or while the person's in prison or whatever. Okay. So I make this TikTok about prison and it goes viral. It's me talking about solitary, how I lost weight, how, it's like the food, and it does millions of views overnight. And ever since that day, I've not missed a day of posting. I've posted every day. And I grinded, and I would go into my car those first couple months. I was still at Whole Foods, and I would be in my car on my lunch breaks recording. I would be in the dish room recording. I would do whatever. And then I quit because I was going to get casted some reality TV show that didn't end up happening, but it forced me to quit. And after that, when I wasn't making any money after I quit, I maxed out my 401k, got that money, got the HSA money or whatever, and then I maxed out my credit cards and grinded for a few months until I had no credit, and I'm still grinding, and I started driving Uber every day, and my old studio was in New York about an hour away. And I remember those days of I was working at a yogurt shop in the morning, opening it up. My friend from the nightclub that was the owner opened up yogurt shop, so I was doing that. Then I would go drive to JFK or LaGuardia, pick up the guest, bring them an hour and a half after already driving an hour and a half to the city, bring them an hour and a half to the studio, record for an hour and a half, then bring them another an hour and a half back to New York City, drive another hour and a half back to Connecticut, and then go drive Uber and then do OnlyFans or whatever. And that's how I paid my bills until I made my first real check, got monetized on YouTube a month and a half later. And then April of last year, I got my first real check. And ever since April of 2023, the podcast brings in a pretty good, decent amount of revenue. And I've paid off my credit card debt. And I built this studio last September, and it's just been growing. And, now it's all about, like, my mindset's even changed in the last year. Like, I wanted the big celebrities. I wanted all this. Now I care about cool. I'll take a picture with them. It's a cool memory because it inspires more people to come on the show and stuff. But a lot of these celebrities, won't sit down with you, or they won't do this, they won't do that for an interview because their agents and publicists are all in the way, and that'll all come in time. But my focus is on just the everyday average people, and I help people where I can. Whenever someone comes to the studio, I offer them, hey, listen, you can, if you come on my show, you're welcome to use the studio. The editing services are a charge, which you got to work out with Matt or whatever. But, you can use the studio to record. And all these studios in New York City and Texas and the big cities charge hundreds of dollars an hour, not even for editing. If you got the services we give here, it's $400 or $500 alone for recording a couple hours. Then that's not including the editing. That's just the files.
That's just to be in here.
Yeah, that's just to be in here. That's the files. So when people come on the show and they have an expression or a feeling of wanting to start their own thing, I said, listen, you can use the studio, man. You can use the studio. I don't care. Use the studio. It's just sitting here, because when I built this place, I thought that was going to be my business of having clients doing editing. And then I found myself feeling like I was working for someone else again, and it was taking time away from my show. And I was outsourcing my clips. I'm like, why am I taking money from people doing their work, having to get yelled at for they want this, this, and that, and I'm outsourcing my clips when I could just X all that out, just focus on my show, increase my amount of episodes, and not have to answer to anyone, and just do my own thing. So that's what I do. And I've been able in the process give a good friend his own business and a new life that he can carve out for himself. And in return, I get to help others too. So it all works out, the grand scheme of things, everything's worked out. I know this is my mission, this is my purpose. And it's just about getting more and more people on the show to share their story and make it okay, and admit that they made a mistake, but they're humans too. And honestly, everyone has made a mistake in their life at some point. Some people just haven't got caught with it. A lot of the people that come on the show, there's so many people that act like their shit don't stink, but they did the same things when they were kids, only they didn't end up in prison for it.
Exactly.
So that's the thing. And obviously there's people that have, killed people, gang people, or stuff like that. But the really bad guys are the ones that are in prison. The true bad guys are still in prison and not talking to me on the show. The people that have some sort of redeeming quality are out, and they're able to come sit down and do this show, And I have law enforcement on. I love the cop episodes. I was in Arkansas a couple weeks ago, sitting at a diner, and I leave, and there was some cops sitting in there, and they walked out, and they tap on my window, and they said, we're big fans of the show. Can we take a picture? That's success right there to me, I love the law enforcement. I think that's why my show is different than other prison content creators, because I feature victims, lawyers, law enforcement, criminals, anyone, variety, psychologists. It's very well mixed. And we just do different episodes about it. And I sit down with different people and we hear different things.
Yeah, you're getting both sides.
I think that's what it's about.
Both sides
it's
of
a
every
conversation.
Story.
Yeah, there's two sides to every story.
Exactly.
And you can have the same prison story, but if it's told if I told my prison story every day, people would get bored with that. But when you see it from 100 different people that have all lived a similar life, each one tells it in a different way. So you could hear about how the food is or someone getting stabbed or a shot caller, but if you hear it from 100 different people, it's kind of interesting because you hear a different perspective, the way they talk, the way they dress, the way they look, all these different perspectives. So I think that's so cool.
It is very cool. And, I have to say firsthand that the benefits of your hard work, what you've accomplished here by creating this, I've benefited tremendously by exactly what you said, giving people an opportunity to come on here. I was about to say with a voice, lack thereof at this moment, but because of Ian, because of what you offered me, what you just said. So this isn't just talk. And everyone knows that follows Locked In. Everyone that knows Ian Bick, that it's not just bullshit talk, that this is gospel. And I'm sitting here, as truth can be, taking advantage of your kindness, not taking advantage, but of the opportunities that you have offered. I'm in that studio. I was, I was my honor and pleasure to be a guest on your show. We chit-chatted exactly what you said about coming out to Connecticut, doing a show, doing whatever's needed if you're serious about it. And I'm as serious as a heart attack about it. And everything you just said, I am doing 100%. And the gains are tremendous. It feels so good to look back at something that was a negative, a very dark point, And now to sit back with a smile on your face, saying, I'm making a difference.
Absolutely.
I'm making a difference. As I've said before, we started doing all this. What an absolute pleasure it is. Not only on the podcast point and the social media point, but on a personal level. People sometimes ask questions about people when the camera stopped rolling. What are people like? And I've only been doing this now. My Fighter War will be 2 years, January 9th. As far as me actually doing shows, it's less than a year. And the people I've met have been tremendous. Unfortunately, some aren't what they seem. We'll let that go. But you are as 100% as can be, and you've helped me tremendously, and it means the world to me. It makes me strive to be better every single show. And I watch, I listen, and I learn. And that's because of you, Matt Cronin, your dad, Michael Bick, the people that I've met, the Danbury family has really given me an opportunity. And Ian, I appreciate it so much.
Call it the Richfield family. We're not giving Danbury credit for nothing. They put me through the dirt, man.
You know what? Well said.
Yeah.
And that's that.
We're the Richfield crew.
The Richfield crew?
Yeah.
We are the Richfield crew.
Yeah, we're the Richfield crew.
And I'm bringing myself into that family. But again, truly though, I mean, your hard work and dedication, no one would blame you if you just took it all yourself. After all that you've had to go through and just took care of Ian. No, that would be fine. But no, man, you're extending that hand, and I've benefited from it, and I still am. So thank you so much.
Of course, brother. Thanks for having me on today.
Well, I was going to say something silly like, can you let people know where to find you? So as silly as that sounds.
I don't even know if anyone listened, even on my podcast, if people make it to that end.
I was just going to say right now, people are like, yeah, we signed off about 15, 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But everyone knows Locked In with Ian Bick. Everyone knows Ian Bick. And I'm proud to say it's more than just a guest. It's my brother, and I love you, man.
I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for having me, and
Thank
feel
you
better,
so
man.
much. Yeah, and God bless you, man.
Don't work too hard.
Yeah, this is the price you pay. You grind, you go through it. So thank you guys so much for your support. Please check us out on YouTube at My Fighter War, along with TikTok, Instagram. And love you guys. And remember, keep fighting the good fight.